Welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk. I'm your host, Scott Minton. Today we're back in the Brock Bourbon Bar. We're doing a little virtual interview, and we are with Mr. Ian Stirsman, the master distiller with Ross and Squibb / can we say MGP? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can still say MGP.
It's funny, you know, we have all these conversations in our world, you know, in the podcast and the bourbon world, and then when the name came out, you know, the change with the Ross and Squibb, we're like, well, can you say MGP anymore? And then my favorite is when you got to tell people what MGP stands for, and then they're like, oh, like what? And then you tell them the backstory and all that type of stuff. So before we do all that, because I'm going to let you do part of that because it's kind of nice to hear it from the actual source. If you don't mind, Ian, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been at the distillery now 12 years. It doesn't seem like that long, but I started off at the distillery as shift manager, so mostly managing the night shift crews. When I started, Greg Metz was our master distiller, and behind him, we didn't really have that much technical expertise behind Greg. He'd been there for like 30 years. He started right out of college, right when he graduated UC, but the technical team was pretty small back then. And they kind of identified a need to kind of increase the bench strength. So they created a role for myself and another gentleman we call the fermentation distillation manager. And it was a great way to learn the distillery really in depth. So I basically just kind of studied under Greg, moved around the distillery every few years. So I managed our boiler house, dryer house for a few years, managed our mashing and whiskey distillation for a few years, and our fermentation yeast prop for a few years. So kind of just got to intimately learn each area of the distillery through that program. And then Greg moved on. We had another kind of mentor, Gordon, working for a little bit. And then he retired, and just right place, right time for me. So in my dream job now.
So refresh my memory, and maybe I'm wrong here. Wasn't Larry Abersold with you guys for a while, or was that just the actual like the mash bill that he kind of helped create?
So Larry actually was the master distiller before Metz.
Okay,
and
that's what I thought
before I started. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure when he left, but it was more than 12 years ago.
There we go. I remember it was a long time ago. Like I said, I've been a big bourbon guy for a long time, and I just remembered that name being synonymous for, you know, especially the 95.5 mash bill, and I couldn't remember if that was something created someplace else that was brought to MGP or what happened there. So
no, the 95.5 I think was around even long before Larry. So you know, somewhere over the years, it switched from an 88-12 originally to the 95.5, and we're not exactly sure when Seagram's changed that recipe, but in a lot of the old Seagram's trial books that we have, it's 88-12, and then at some point it's the 95.5, and we don't really have great documentation on when they changed that.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
I always heard that it would like somehow paid homage to like the old Maryland Rise. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing. I'd never heard of the 88-12, so that's pretty neat. That's one thing I'm a massive fan of with MGP. So let's talk a little bit more about the mash bills. What profiles do you find to be like the most drinkable, those type of things? Like, is there a preference that you have? And everybody's got to have a favorite baby, right? So I thought that might be a good question to start off with as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're unique because we do so many different mash bills. So like over a course of a year, we might do 40 different mash bills. But I think you're talking about kind of the main three probably, or main four, and that's the LESV, the 21% rye bourbon, the LBSV, the 36% rye bourbon, and then our LQSV, which is the 95.5. And of those, the 95.5 is really my favorite. I mean, I'm a rye whiskey guy. Mm-hmm. I love bourbon too, but most of my favorite whiskeys I've ever had are 95.5.
So you're not a big weeder guy, huh?
I like weeders too, but I'm more of a rye guy.
That's okay. Listen, I'm right there with you. I do love a good rye whiskey. Like I told you, you know, I mean, the 95.5s I always loved a lot initially, and then it seemed like they've been a little bit more mint forward the last few barrels that I've been trying. So I've switched up on a couple of other mash bills that you guys have started creating or that were just unique and different. Like, and we're going to try one of them here in a little bit. Mm-hmm. So before we do that, let's dive into the first bottle. I think this one is the Remus bootlegger. Brian, you want to cover that one?
Yeah. Remus Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It's 47 ABV and is referred to as the king of the bootleggers. Just looking at the stats on this, which I'm sure you could go, but 5 to 6 years old, charred American white oak. So with these, are they from a particular like rick house, barrel house? Are they like how?
No, so we pick the lots out for each bottling, and they don't necessarily come from the same rick houses. So we're always blending for taste profile, and where the barrels batches were stored can change from bottling to bottling. But
are you involved? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, it's a blend of the 21 and the 36% rye. So it's just kind of that classic MGP bourbon profile. It's that kind of more rye forward, what we like to call Indiana style bourbon, as opposed to the sweeter Kentucky style.
All right.
Whenever you get going are you a part of that room whenever they're kind of starting that blending process, trying to hone in on flavors and what they're kind of looking for?
Yeah, so I do the blending now for all the Remus and Rossville, all the Ross and Squibb products. So yeah, I'm in that room. We used to rely a little more on our former master blender for blending of the Ross and Squibb portfolio, but now I've kind of taken over those responsibilities. I still we still have a team. I still work with our blenders on that, but I'm responsible for the blending of all of our Ross and Squibb products now.
So there's lots of distilleries that are out there that are a little different than you guys, right? You guys were known kind of for contract distilling to begin with. Do you think that you guys, as you guys are laying out these type of portfolios, will move more to like that, where people can come visit, walk through the rick houses, find out how you guys do things? Like for me, I think that helps cause a little bit more like well-being or feelings for people, right? Like there's a mystery about MGP, and I think that might be one of the reasons that sometimes I feel like it's misunderstood. I love it. I'm in multiple clubs on Facebook that are MGP groups and stuff like that. So it's always really, really nice. But the one thing like I've never been able to do is come up there and like walk through the facility, right? So what do you foresee as far as that coming, or is that a possibility?
I would love to have more people at the distillery. But it's just when Seagram's kind of rebuilt the place in the 1930s, I don't think they were thinking bourbon tourism was going to ever be a thing. They didn't build it with that in mind. It is a busy working place. We have trucks of grain coming in, every 10, 15 minutes. We have trucks of distiller dried grain leaving every 10 or 15 minutes. We have a rail spur that runs right through the heart of the distillery, so we're moving rail cars around. So we would need to find a really good and safe way to do it, but a way that is still authentic enough that people want to come. And we just haven't really been able to figure that out quite yet. We've talked about it a lot. Hopefully one day we'll figure it out. But I do agree with you. I think that we're a little bit misunderstood in the industry, and I think a lot of it is because you can't come to our distillery and see the people working there, see what's going on. I think there's this kind of misconception that we're like this big factory, this big industrial distillery, and whenever people talk about the other heritage distilleries that are in the same realm of size as we are, they're talked about like a heritage distillery, not a big factory. And I think the reason for that is because a lot of people have been to them, right? And they've seen the people working there. And I think, that would change a little bit if we were able to bring people on site as well.
I think it would. I think it would really help with the perception of it. So, man, these Remus bottles, I've just always really, really enjoyed them, and it's probably because I've just been such a big fan of your all's mash bills in general. What's one of your favorite things about the profile that comes off of the Remus bourbons?
It's just that like I said, that Indiana style, high rye, not as sweet, just more savory notes, and I think it's kind of unique to us. There's some other pretty high ride distilleries on the other side of the river, but nobody quite as high as us, I think.
That's fair. There's only one that I can think of that mirrors your all stuff, only a point or two off on the rye.
Yeah, or a point or two higher, right?
That's exactly right.
Hey, Ian, so something that I get in this that I didn't expect. Oftentimes when it's a higher rye, like you get the rye up front, like it's maple. It's for 94 proof. It is so flavorful, and it is so sweet on that initial sip. I wasn't expecting that at all. Like how? Are you picking select barrels? How do you accomplish that?
Yeah, you have to remember, like, we're in a unique scenario where we have this big heritage distillery. We have the inventory of barrels of just about anyone else out there, right? And we have this kind of small growing brand, so we're able to be really selective of the barrels we're putting in it. I think that's one of our biggest selling points, maybe more so than anyone else in the industry in terms of just the sheer number of barrels we have to the number of barrels we're using for our own brands. So we're able to be really, really selective. And yeah, I think 94 proof to some in this day of age sounds a little bit low, like you're watering it down a lot. Yep. But one thing to remember is that our barrels typically go down in proof. So we go into the barrel, a little lower than some. Some go up, right under 125. We go in the barrel at 120. But our barrels typically go down in proof as they age, just because of the humidity down in the river valley where our distillery is. And so that 94 proof might not be as watered down as some other 94 proofs out there, if that whiskey's coming out of the barrel higher proof. So.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. When I go through a lot of the different barrels that I see out there doing single barrels with NDPs and other things like that, it's always odd to see any barrels that are over that 120, 121 proof. They're almost always in that 110 to 115 proof, so they almost always do drop in proof. I'll tell you the one thing, and I have no idea where they're coming from, but the ones that I always find the oddest, but they're always some of the most flavorful, is I've seen some of the 36 mash bills that's come out where they were like below 100 proof. And I was just shocked at barrel strength. They're sitting at 98 and some change or something like that. Where do you see that take place the most? Is that like in a specific rick house when you see those, or is that like it can happen kind of anywhere?
So there are locations in the rick houses that tend to go down in proof faster than others. There's also, a couple locations that tend to go up in proof. And those are typically just where we don't heat we don't heat intentionally any of the rick houses, but certain spots and certain rick houses do get some heat from different equipment, some of the barrel handling equipment. We do heat the first floor of at least one of the rick houses. And that creates, just a drier environment that heat dries up the air, and the barrels tend to go up in proof in a couple places. But there's different, and then there's some locations that are really damp, and the barrels really drop in proof. So
yeah,
Scott, this is one of these times where I wish we could see share the video itself, because when you say like really damp, you smile about it. When you said they go up in proof, it's like, Ian, it's like you smile about that. It's like you're giving context that other people can't see in your face. Speaking of context, as far as like volume or like size, rick houses, like how large are you all?
So our kind of official statement is we're one of the 5 largest whiskey producing distilleries in the country. But we... one thing to remember is we do a lot more than just whiskey. So, we do about 40 different mash bills of whiskey over the course of a year. We do a lot of light whiskey. Obviously, we make more rye whiskey than anyone else out there. But we're also the largest producer of gin in North America. So a lot of people don't know that. And we also produce a lot of grain neutral spirit or vodka. So when you add in all those things, we may be the largest distillery that makes whiskey, maybe. So we are, the distillery is almost a mile from north to south. It's a big campus. And we have a lot of barrel storage on site, but then we even have barrel storage off site as well in Williamstown, Kentucky, Sunman, Indiana, and Jennings County, Indiana. So a lot of barrels in storage. We are publicly traded, and we've never made a public statement on exactly how many, but there's a lot of barrels in storage.
So let me ask you another question. So when you talk about, a mile long, right? So how many stills do you guys run at one time? I mean, are you guys running 5 72-inch column stills? Are you running, what does that look like? And then to kind of piggyback that, do you guys run rye only in all these column stills for a month or two, and then you switch over to wheat, and then you switch over to light whiskey? How do you schedule that? I mean, 40 is a lot, right? So you got to figure out that's a massive undertaking to be able to do those things and do it right.
So at a given time, we could be running we could be running 2 different grades of grain neutral spirit or vodka. We could be running gin. We could be running really multiple different types of gin. And we could be running 2 different types of bourbon or rye or American whiskey, and we could be running light whiskey all at the same time.
That's a lot of stills, man.
Oh my God.
That's a whole lot of stills.
I'm like,
Yeah.
wow.
My math, that's like 9 stills. Is that?
There's about 15 active.
Oh, 50. Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
That's insane. So how big are they? Like, are you using the 36-inch? Do you have 48s? I mean, or do you have a blend of kind of everything?
We have everything for column stills. We have everything from a 48 to 72.
Gotcha. Okay. That's so
72?
impressive. 72 inch, yeah.
It's like, how tall is that column still? It's 72 inches, round.
They're right around 110 feet without the skirt, I believe.
So you're
Wow.
running like 30 plates on that thing? 30 or 40?
Yeah, in that range. Not 40.
Okay.
Close. Yeah.
Okay. I know enough to be dangerous, man. Like I always tell people,
Yeah.
know enough to be dangerous. I've been to a lot of these things in my life. Like I said, I'd love to come to your all's place. I really would. It would be amazing because, like I said, I've been a big, massive fan of you guys for so long, and it just like I said, anytime I think about it, I'm like, man, I know they produce a ton. Like, what does it look like in that place? Because I've driven by, a million times. I'm originally from Southern Indiana, like out towards in between Scottsburg and Madison, so not horribly far from you guys.
Yeah. Hey, Ian, have you ever taken boxing lessons? Because when we asked the questions, you were like bobbing and weaving like an absolute champ. I mean, you really are. Yeah. So kudos to you. Kudos to the people that are like, all right, you got it. Yeah. So, but like, seriously, so. All right, do you do a lot of podcasts where the questions we're asking were there more common than usual, like where the things you can answer than the things that you bob and weave around?
Yeah, we have to be careful.
Yeah.
Just because we never made public statements about capacities, and if we get too specific with still sizes and all that stuff, you kind of people could back out those things, and we used to be a little tighter lipped about stuff. We've been more open recently, and that'll probably continue. I mean, some of the stuff I think we just can't say because we've never made a public statement, and there's just never really been a reason to make a public statement. It's not like we're hiding it, but with a publicly traded company, information's either public or it's not.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
The secret sauce.
It's one of those funny things. The one thing about bourbon, as a drinker, I love transparency. And that's the reason, when you get an NDP that's fully transparent, now obviously some sign NDAs, right? There's certain things they can't tell you, but when you find people that are transparent, to me, that's so much fun because then you can dive in a little bit deeper and find out a little bit more. And it makes the experience more enjoyable because you know what's going into the glass. Speaking of that, the second bottle we're going to drink on or sip on is the Remus Master Distiller Experimental Series Batch 2, distilled in 2017. This is a straight wheat whiskey, so main ingredient is wheat. And it looks like it's been finished in tawny port, white port, Oloroso sherry, and ruby port. So that's a lot of port.
Yes, it is.
I love the proof point, too, 113.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, so that's pretty close to cast strength on this. We just brought it down just a few proof points. We tasted it at different proof points, and 113 is the kind of where we landed on it. It is a straight wheat whiskey, so it is our LKSV, which is 95% wheat, 5% malted barley. So it's LQSV with wheat instead of rye. And the thing that I like about this release is it was my first foray into finishing. MGP whiskey has been finished a lot, and it's never been my focus because, at the distillery, I have a lot more leadway to make our whiskey unique by doing other things than finishing, where a lot of our customers, that's one of their main levers to make our whiskey, it unique in their expressions. But I liked this one because the wheat whiskey being kind of softer, not as dominant flavors as like a rye. It really shows the nuances of each one of those finishes pretty well.
Yeah.
So I think it is a finish heavy release. I think any kind of finished wheat whiskey is going to be heavy on the finish just because of the lightness of the whiskey. But
No, the legs are going nowhere on this glass.
Dude, and this nose, it is sweet. It is syrupy. It is.
Dude, the dark fruit.
Yeah, it's
there's
got
like
a beautiful red fruit nose to it.
Yeah.
that it comes out on.
there's like a rich fig right in the mid palate too. I really, really enjoy this.
So I have a couple questions kind of coming up here because I think this is a great foray and segue, because a lot of these things that you're probably running into are things that you may have had your hands on in some form or fashion in your early time at the distillery. So I think you were also probably there at the core time whenever there was like a barrel shortage or people were having issues with barrels sourcing. And I think now a lot of that juice that was put into those barrels, and if you want to talk about some of those barrels, are starting to really mature and come of age right now. And you're being able to now, as master distiller, be able to come and start looking at those and seeing what you can do with them. And if you want to kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, so that's pretty accurate. So I think the peak of the barrel shortage for us was probably around 2015, and we were for the fill year 2015, we probably have more different cooperage in the rick house than any other year, and it does make it really interesting now because you just have so many different barrel types, so many different coopers, and it just adds another kind of layer of variation to what we're blending right now, and I do think it makes it really interesting. And yeah, it's also fun now because I've been there long enough where almost everything that we're dumping now, with the exception of like the really old Gatsby stuff, I had a part in producing. So like I remember one of, if not the first time we ran this LKSV wheat whiskey, I was on shift and it foamed really bad. And I remember in the middle of the night, I mean, we had, thousands of gallons of foam spilling over our fermenters,
wow.
going into the basement. And I was brand new. It was a pretty exciting night. But
I would say so.
All right, low man on the totem pole.
yeah. But it turned into some pretty good whiskey, so I think it was worth it.
So I'm gonna piggyback and see if you can dive deeper. If you can't, just say, "Hey, man, I can't go there." We've heard different stuff as far as like the types of oaks and varieties and stuff like that, and some of them come from different countries and things to that nature. Is there one profile that you've seen from that shortage year, from that 2015 year, that like really, really like piques your interest as far as like, hey, we should play with this in the future?
I don't know that there's like really one that really stands out. Our first experimental series last year was the Seguin Moreau barrels that were from that time, and I really liked that specific batch of those barrels. But the Coopers are interesting. It's kind of like locations of the rick houses to me.
Okay.
People get caught up in their own experience sometime, and they think, okay, just because this batch that I really loved came from this spot of the rick house means that that spot of the rick house makes the best batch, and that's not necessarily true, right? That's a one-time experience. And I think a lot of what you hear about different coopers is logic along those lines too, because I've had really great barrels from a lot of different coopers in our rick houses, and I've had just okay barrels from a lot of different coopers in our rick houses. It's the same with location. I've had really great barrels in a lot of locations. Almost every rick house we have has produced great barrels at some time, and has produced okay barrels at some time. Like I like whenever I start evaluating batches for a blend, I'm blind to the cooperage and I'm blind to the location in the rick house, because I don't want to, my own
Biases.
kind of biases from my own experiences to influence what I'm smelling, what I'm tasting.
So from today's aspect, do you guys run 3 or 4 different cooperages that you guys try to work with, or do you guys have 1 or 2? How does that work today?
We have less. We have a kind of a main partner, and then maybe we get something unique from somewhere else, but we have a main partner now that we mostly use.
Nothing Amberana?
No, Danny does a good job with the Rio, but I'll leave the Amberana stuff to him.
Good call.
Now, kind of coming back to you, and I like we've had some great experiences with other master distillers that have had a chemistry degree, and you have one, correct?
Chemical engineering, but
chemical engineering, chemical engineering to be more precise. Now, with your position and sometimes being that chemical engineer, are you able to have a little bit more leeway and play? I mean, are you get to play a little bit with the mash bill, or do you get to play with the yeast, or what things are you able to kind of possibly geek out on? Because I know there's probably something that you really geek out on from a chemical engineering standpoint that you get to do now.
Yeah, I mean, developing new mash bills is fun. The yeast, we almost exclusively use the old V strain from Seagram's, but we've used others in the past as well. One of the things that really is exciting to me is the connection between agriculture and the whiskey, and I think that that's really something the industry started to pay more attention to in the last several years. I mean, Seagram's did in the past. We source our rye from Germany and Sweden, and Seagram's went through a lot of trial and a lot of studies to land there. But in general, I would say in this industry that connection to agriculture has been much more, I don't know if ignored is the right way to put it, but it has not been as explored as like in the winemaking industry, right? So I think just recently we're starting to explore that more, and that's really interesting to me. And then also, in this industry, for the most part, people have just done what's always been done. People are afraid to change in this industry because it does take a long time to see the results of your change. The whiskey's got to sit in a barrel for a long time. You don't know. I mean, we have a good idea of what we want it to smell and taste like before it goes into the barrel. But if you make a change, you don't really 100% understand the results of that change until the whiskey starts coming out of the barrels. So people have just kind of done what they've always done. But I do think that that's changed a little bit with our generation as well. Starting to experiment a little bit more with production methods. We're always gonna have our methods that have been passed down over generations, but we've started to tweak those a little bit and see what happens. So I think we've done a lot of experimentation over the last 12 years since I've been here, and I think that's what really excites me about it. But it's an interesting business because there's just so much natural variation that even if you're not experimenting, you're going to get a lot of variation. And then you throw some experimentation in there, and it's fun because no two barrels are ever the same, and when you're doing a lot of different production methods, using different grains, experimenting, you just get such a cool variation of barrels coming out, and you have a lot of tools to blend with and make some great whiskeys.
I know you got probably a little bit more time before you were able to, but do you have any kind of goals or accomplishments you're looking to make your mark as a master distiller? And would, getting to that 4-year mark of possibly releasing a bottled and bond that would be under your watch, was that be something interesting for you?
The bottled and bond thing, maybe, potentially. We did a bottled and bond release with the Rossville, but in terms of the goals, I mean, I think I'm not just in the industry. I'm an enthusiast of the industry. I love whiskey, especially I love MGP whiskey. So I think a lot of my goal is just to carry on, the tradition of making great whiskey here, and hopefully, hopefully the best barrels of MGP, haven't been made yet, right? So it's just kind of continuing that legacy on, building some brands, because we have this incredible distillery making incredible whiskey. We've been around for 178 years, and I think building some brands from us of our whiskey is important too. Because most people do know us as a supplier of whiskey for all these other brands, which is really cool in its own right because we get to see all these variations of our whiskey. We get to, there's no way I could be creative enough to do all the different things that have been done with our whiskey, right? Because we have all these great customers doing all these creative things with it. But I think building a brand that really expresses our whiskey the way we want it expressed is a legacy that I'd like to leave behind.
All right, Barbara, I want you to dive in on this one.
I am so with you. I am more into ryes. So ryes first, typically, then wheaters, and then kind of trickling down from there. So we have the Remus highest rye straight bourbon whiskey, 51 corn, 39 rye, 10% malted rye. 6 years, and it says King of the Bootleggers at the bottom as well. It comes in at 109 proof.
So tell us a little bit more about this one, because I've not seen this mash bill from you guys, especially because of it being rye and malted rye versus like regular just all rye. Like I've seen the 5149 in the past. They're few and far between from what I understand, but like this one is like I've never seen this specific mash bill. So tell us a little bit more in depth about this one. Was this one like that you kind of dove into like when you first came in? Because it's aged right around the time when you came on board. So I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, so we started making this mash bill in 2017. So a few years after I started, but I would have been, in that fermentation distillation manager role at that time, and I'm pretty sure that I set up this mash bill to run in the distillery, but I didn't come up with it. So It wasn't my idea, but I set it up to technically run in the distillery, and it's great because that malted rye really makes it a lot sweeter, especially on the front of the palate than you would expect. So it doesn't. It's way sweeter than what you would expect a 49% rye bourbon to be. It's very brown sugary up front, and then all that rye flavor and rye spice just kind of builds slowly in the back of the palate. And to me, I've described it a lot as almost like a ginger snap cookie with that brown sugar up front and then the baking spices in the back of the palate. But I love this mash bill. like I said, I'm a rye whiskey person, and this is very rye forward. But the malted rye definitely gives it a little different character. It sweetens it up, but also brings out a lot of that rye flavor. You know, the specific kind of enzyme bouquet in malted rye is really good at breaking down the different parts of the grain where some of the precursors to the flavor compounds you think of when you think of a rye whiskey are held. So that malted rye really does a good job of breaking down the rye grain and kind of releasing all those flavors.
There's that chemical engineer.
Yep.
I know. I know. You're talking. I'm like, there he goes.
Yep,
there he goes.
So is that malted rye is what giving it all that mouthfeel, or is that just kind of the barrel interaction? What is that? Because I mean, typically that's what you kind of get out of malt, right? You typically out of malt, you typically is where you get the viscosity, the mouthfeel on bourbon and things to that nature. I didn't know if the malted rye kind of does the same thing because of the effect that you're doing to it.
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that really clearly. I mean, a lot of people do talk about the malt giving a viscosity, but I've had some 100% rye whiskey with no malted grain that has good viscosity. I've had some 100% American single malts that are kind of thin. So so yeah, I don't know that malted rye. I don't know if I could say that it's responsible for the viscosity on this one or not. I think that's more just kind of getting the mouthfeel we want with the barrels we're selecting when we blend.
So correct me if I'm wrong, malt is the most expensive grain in distillation in that situation. Is that correct?
If you're just talking like corn, rye, malted barley, yes. And then a malted rye is going to be even more expensive than the malted barley.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what about wheat? Is wheat fall in the cost variance between rye and barley?
Between corn and rye.
Okay. Gotcha. I couldn't remember where the expense went. I mean, being a publicly traded company, that's part of it too, right? You got a bottom line you got to hit, right? So
Yeah.
So like I always wonder why more people don't play with more malted barley, because I do find that if I find a mash bill that's heavy barley, I always have a tendency to kind of fall, because I like that creamy, chewy note that you kind of get whenever you get a higher note of malted barley in there. So. So I'm always just kind of curious, why don't people play with it? And it's probably because of the expense. You're just spending more money to make a batch.
Yeah, I mean it is more expensive, but in this industry, your inputs, to your margin is pretty good. So if we think we can make a better whiskey by using more expensive grain, we're going to do it every time.
Question for you on this. So do you get a chance to get out and actually just kind of sample barrels to see where things are at? And if you do, have you come across one that you're just going, wow, I'm marking this. This is going to get set aside and we're going to do something special?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I am out sampling barrels a lot. And our quality department too does barrel surveys as well. So I work with them on the barrel surveys, but then I kind of, go a little further outside of those barrel surveys. When we're blending our products, and there has been some really good barrels. But we're usually looking at batches. But we, sometimes when there's really good barrels, we put those in our single barrel program. We haven't really released any single barrel offerings outside of our single barrel program where customers are picking their single barrel yet, but certain batches I definitely save for us for whether it's going to be in repeal or whatever we're going to do with it.
Master Distiller Select.
And then there's been a couple barrels that we actually pick our own barrel at the distillery every year. So
Oh, that's neat.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
that's cool.
yeah. So I always keeping an eye out for the one that we buy at the distillery. Too.
Okay.
So I know you guys do single barrels. We've actually picked a couple with some of the local clubs that I'm involved in, and I've never seen one older than 8 years old. So do you guys foresee like letting folks dive into some of your older stock, or is a lot of your older stock have dibs on it? Like I mean, obviously with being a contract distiller, right? Like you guys have customers that have barrels that are just sitting in your all's rick houses. So I don't know what you all have available to the masses. Like when a liquor store says, "Hey, I want to pick a barrel of Remus or Rossville," right? Like what is available, or what does that picture look like long term, or do you even have an idea at this point?
Well, that's a great question, because that's an easy intro for me to plug our new single barrel program. So,
cool.
We are doing a Distiller's Vault Remus single barrel program this year, where we are offering some kind of older and more unique barrels. So in that program this year, I have a batch of 11-year 36% rye that I really liked, and then we have a 9-year of the LISV, the 49% rye, so the one you guys just tasted. And then we also have a 7-year of our 100% malted rye. So it kind of starts out with the oldest but the most standard mash bill, and then we get a little younger but a little more unique in the mash bills as we go.
Oh, 11 years, 11-year-old 36. Let me see. That's, man, there's a lot of cherry cola in those batches.
Yeah.
It's funny how MGP changes, right? Like I always say, it's like at 7 years, you get a specific profile. Like I almost know exactly what I'm going to be drinking when I drink it. And then for some reason, right around 8.5 to 9 years, that barrel, like I know it's switching to this. And then once it hits that 10 to 11.5 year, like that cherry cola Dr. Pepper like profile comes through, and I'm just like, yeah, that's it. That's. And I've not tried too many barrels that are much older than that, other than the American light whiskey. But man, I tell you, those are special barrels. So like that's really exciting. I'm calling dibs on an 11-year pick. I don't know how we figure that one out, but I'm calling dibs.
Hey, Scott, so I've got some 13, 14, and 50-year-old, like some of the older, like the previous year's MGP.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah,
good.
yeah. You don't see those very often anymore, though.
Yep, not anymore. And Ian, I'm glad that you mentioned about how a lot of your barrels lose proof. Some of my favorites, like from the old stock, they were like 10, 11, like between 80. I have an 88.4. I've got about 6 that are open. They go up to like 93.9.
Oh, wow.
Just something about that little sweet spot with the 10 to 11-year stuff. Is there anything that we can expect that may be available in that upcoming program?
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
Like proof variance, I think, is what he's talking about, like in the lower proof ranges.
So I went way back and I got all excited and I kind of reminisced, and then I tried to bring it back and I did not bring it back correctly. So thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
So there's nothing. The batch that I picked out for the 11-year LBSV is right in the 115 to 118 proof range. So nothing quite that low. And yeah, it's usually the really old barrels that start getting, close to 100 or sub 100. The last few releases of our Gatsby Reserve have been right around that 100 proof mark.
So good. So good.
But in our single barrel program this year, the older stuff that I picked out is kind of in that 115 to 118 range.
That's awesome. Are you able to share how many barrels that you have like selected yourself that are kind of off to the side? And if not, we're going to ask again anyway.
Tell us to kick rocks.
So it's a little fluid. We have different inventories. For our branded spirits and for our contract distilling. But it's fluid, if there's barrels that I like, in our contract distilling inventory, I can swap out barrels or kind of figure out which ones I want to use for different projects and for different products.
That's power.
So where will price point land in this situation? Is that going to be dictated by the retailer, or is that going to be dictated by kind of you guys from that aspect?
You're talking for our single barrel program,
right?
The Distiller's Vault.
Yep.
believe that we're looking at like an on the shelf between like $59.99 and $69.99.
Oh
Oh
wow.
my
Oh.
god! Hey,
Wow.
Hey, we're
Really?
in 2014 and 15 again.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
My gosh,
That's impressive.
That is super awesome.
Yeah.
we need to get on the list.
Yes. 2 barrels, please. Maybe 3.
For that price, maybe.
But I know we can't mention certain things, but that is a definite memory for sure, Brian. Like I said, Ian, we've been around for a couple of days.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, picking a barrel notwithstanding, you guys said you want to come to the distillery. You guys are welcome anytime. I'll show you around. It's a pretty neat place.
Wait, what time do you open up at?
It's
Careful.
24/7. There's no close.
Hey,
Are,
so
are
is
you
there
there on Saturdays?
yes, and is there a gate or is there a door? Is like a secret knock?
Yeah, you just tell the guard at the guard shack you're there to see Ian.
Hey, Scott, hey, cut this part out. Our fans cannot have this information.
He said we could. He didn't say
Oh,
just
he did.
anybody.
Good.
He did. He did just say us.
He said we were available. Yeah.
All right, Ian. I there's a question that we usually ask a lot of our guests, and I'm gonna take the forefront for
Are we
this
asking this
question.
already? We don't.
We're going to
hey,
John.
yeah, we're not
if
done.
you have other questions,
No,
to
go
ask,
ahead. You ask this one. We'll dive back in. This will be a fun one at
Absolutely.
least for
This
him.
will be
All right.
fun.
I think Ian will actually enjoy this question.
I do
can tell
too.
by his personality.
So the question is that you're approaching the zombie apocalypse. You've been bit. You're going to turn here in within minutes. But you want to enjoy one last pour. Now, usually with a lot of the groups or the people that we've interviewed, we usually say you need to pick something outside of what your brand is that you usually represent. What do you go to in your cupboard that you want to have a last sip of, or you turn into a zombie? It's the end of the world. What is your last?
Wow.
I mean, you said you were an enthusiast. I'm anxious to hear this one.
Outside of our brand,
You can give us one of each. How about that? Does that make you feel better?
no, I can do outside of our brand.
All right.
He's
So
like,
there's
he's like Penelope. You can do this one. You can do this one.
so I have a few of the old Smooth Ambler gift shop ryes that are definitely on that list, and I would say my other one is a Cavalon Amontillado finished. So I don't know if you guys are into Taiwanese whiskey at all. But,
I've actually drank quite a bit of Cavalon. That's a deep dive right there. I love that one. I've not heard anybody ever say that before.
Wait,
so those
Cavalon
are probably
what?
my two.
Okay.
It was a Amontillado finish, so
Yeah.
it's a cherry cask.
Cavalon.
Dear gosh.
So the
that's a
Cavalon,
word.
though, so is that and I've never tried that specific one. I'd love to try it. Is that one that's high malt or is that high corn one?
It's malt.
Malt, okay. Yeah. Some of the Cavalons I've surprised that they had as much corn as they did, but yeah. That is Now I've got to look that one up.
Right? I know.
No,
This is one like we need Siri to answer what it is.
So
or spell it.
I want to flip the script on that one. I want to know. I want to know what is Rossville or MGP. What's your favorite? Like if you had to take you get one sip left, man. What do you got? Are you going 95.5?
I'm probably going 95.5. This year's Gatsby was really good though. This year's
Okay.
Gatsby was really good, but I'm probably going Rossville Barrel Proof.
That's amazing. I love that. Huh.
Now, whenever we were kind of, or, as you talk about the different barrel finishes and everything like that, I will say one that I had, I think it was last year, came from that kind of barrel shortage. And as we're kind of wrapping back, to that, it was a Colombian oak
Oh,
finish.
yeah.
That one of
Yeah.
that originally came from MGP or Ross and Squibb. And I will say that is probably one of the most amazing flavors and finishes that came from that Colombian barrel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those or not, but man, those were good.
So So you're not talking about a finish, correct? You're talking about
No.
the original barrel.
The original
oak,
barrel,
yes.
yes.
The barrel itself was a Colombian oak.
Yeah,
you did say finish on accident, but yes, it,
I did. Sorry.
yeah, no, OG in the Colombian oak.
Yeah, so there we were sourcing some barrels from Colombia in that time, and I think some really great whiskey came out of those barrels. But the barrels themselves were a little hard to handle for us.
Really?
Yeah, they weren't. There was a little more variation in those barrels than in our typical barrels. We didn't love those barrels from a barrel handling standpoint.
Wait,
Okay.
So what you're saying is that Colombian Colombian
Oak. Yeah.
yes, has a bit more attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that.
I'm not
I
sure
like
if you ever
that
got
thought
to.
process.
Well, I'm not sure if you ever got to taste one, but the one that I was fortunate enough to have, and actually I still have a bottle of here, is a rare time. Whenever it was kind of one of the bourbon recipes, just regular bourbon recipes, but it had a citrus note to it, which was so unique and so different.
Yeah.
And we just had to attribute it to that Colombian oak, infusing that different flavor into it. But it was amazing.
I
We
forgot
do
that
get,
bottle.
I mean, I pick up a citrus note in our bourbons sometimes. It's not. I would say it's not typically there, but there are batches out there that definitely have a citrus note to them.
Yeah. I found that almost every one of them that I've tried, because I've tried probably more barrels than I'd care to admit.
Hey, I get those text messages all the time.
They also have like almost a creamy texture, almost like chewy, like creme brulee type note, like that's on the back end. Like it's just so weird. It almost gives like in the one he's talking about specifically. Immediately when I drank that one, it was cream savers, like that old school, like cream
Yeah.
saver, like lifesaver candy. I was like, dude, that's that in a bottle, like, and he was
Yeah.
like, dude, you're right. And so, and we all bought a bottle of it.
We
so
did.
I think my bottle went way faster than anybody else's, though.
Dude, I have so many questions.
I know. My brain is like
All right, hey, does anybody here have a boxer?
a boxer, like a dog.
Yeah. All right. So boxers, they have this energy because they don't have a tail and it's always shaking around. Honestly, and like I very much feel that way. Right. So, all right, I'm going to ask about the 95.5. How is it that some of the barrels go dill, some of them go minty? Is your typical 95.5? Are they majority like the same, from the same barrels, or does it vary some?
So that's tough. Yeah, some of the profile is very mint forward, some is very dill forward, some is very spice forward, and I don't have a great answer for you on why that is. I think I attribute most of it to the grain, so the rye grain we're getting. Most of the rye grain we get is from Germany and Sweden. We pick out the specific lots holds coming to us. But in terms of like, we haven't been able to identify like a processing parameter that makes it more dill, less mint. We haven't been able to identify a location in the rick houses. We haven't been able to identify a cooper. It seems to be pretty random. Some batches are more dill, some batches more mint, some batches more spice, and I wish I could tell you I can make a batch and tell you it's
Yeah.
minty, but I can't.
Yeah.
For me, that's what's so fun about this is that the barrel has so much influence, and there's very little that we can do to anticipate what the end product's going to be.
So I want to piggyback really quick. Of those three different flavors, which one would you prefer to hear or prefer to taste?
So my favorites are a blend of the three, but I would say I really like the mint and the dill, or what kind of stands out to me.
Okay.
That's our signature. I think it's what makes it unique.
So I like the sweet mint. When I can get the ones that are like almost like that spearmint, like the double mint gum, I really like that. When I get some of the barrels that are like more of that peppermint or winter mint, that spice, like it's spicy mint, because I like spice. I love baking spice. Anytime I can find some with baking spice, I'm all about it.
He has that tattoo.
But that winter mint, like I guess it's the bite. Like it's almost like it overtakes the rest of the flavor profile. So like that, the winter mint and the peppermint, I feel like do that. But the spearmint, like it's so sweet and so mellow that when you get that, it's almost more field greeny in some capacity. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones that I like. When I get a barrel of that, I'm just like, yes, please, let's just keep going. So
Andy's mint here, like those ones from Olive Garden, if you've ever had those.
Big back. Hey, Ian, so I've seen so many more ryes that are 112 plus proof. Does rye not lose does rye not lose proof even at age compared to like your bourbons?
No, they behave very similar. I mean, it's it's just the ethanol percentage in the barrel, the partial pressure of ethanol in the atmosphere, and the partial pressure of water in the atmosphere is going to determine it. It's no different than bourbon in that way.
Thank you for that.
Is there a favorite char level you prefer to work with? Like when you taste through barrels and you find, char 3 is just kind of leans more into your palate, or char 4. Because I think most of your barrels are char 3 and char 4, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our typical barrel is going to be a 4 char staves with 3 char head. Yeah. There's a lot of ifs when you're talking about char for me, because the barrel, the whiskey that's going to be best in like a char 2 barrel isn't the same as the whiskey that's going to be best in a char 4 barrel. And it also depends on, how long it's aging, all of those things. I don't know that I have a favorite. Char 4 is obviously going to be the most forgiving. People think there's a little bit of a misconception that that the barrel gets, or, the whiskey gets its color from the char, and that it's going to age faster in a heavy char. But the char is charcoal, right? And it's like a Brita water filter. Your Brita water filter doesn't give your water color, right, or flavor. The charcoal actually helps kind of act like a Brita water filter in a way. It helps kind of remove some of the off flavors and some of the impurities. Whereas like a low char barrel, like a number 2 char barrel, is actually going to impart a lot more color and a lot more flavor early on, but it's going to be a lot less forgiving to any defects in that distillate. So it just depends, I wish we could have all the chars lined up and say, hey, this batch goes in this char, but that's not really possible in everything that we do. But
is there a rick house that you find is kind of more in your sweet spot? Like you mentioned locations, right? Like, so you got some stuff right there at Lawrenceburg, and then obviously you said Jennings County, and then you said someplace in Kentucky. Is there kind of like an area where you feel like give off the profile that you prefer more than maybe, another, or are you pretty much finding stuff everywhere that you really, really love?
We find stuff everywhere that we really like. I think it's funny because sometimes I get people that don't work at the distillery that talk about their favorite places in our rick houses, and and I don't know that I have one. But there are some locations that I think tend to be good, but again, it's my personal experience. We haven't done enough rigorous studies over decades to really prove that out, right? And sometimes, like I said, I when I'm evaluating batches, I do it blind, and sometimes I get really surprised by the batches I like and the batches I don't like by the location, and just about some of my one of the big things is we have both racked and palletized as well. Okay. And some people swear that racked is the only way to do it, right? Because that's the way it's the historic way of doing it, and some of my favorite barrels have been palletized. I think the rye, we picked an 11-year, 10-year, 95 rye for our employee barrel last year, and that was
You keep on rubbing that in.
I know.
a
He
palletized.
really does.
That was a palletized barrel in kind of a non-traditional rick house, and it was incredible. So we get gems all over the place.
I need to start driving around Jennings County more because where I go in North Vernon, I don't recall there being any rick houses. So they must be closer to like the Switzerland other part of town. So I'm going to do some research here.
All right, Ian. So we've had 3 different George Remus products. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us who George Remus was?
Yeah, so he was a bootlegger during Prohibition. He owned part of our distillery during Prohibition. So our distillery pre-Prohibition was the Rossville Union Distillery and the Squibb Distillery. And he owned the Squibb Distillery during Prohibition. He was the biggest bootlegger by volume there was during Prohibition. And he was a pharmacist and an attorney. And he,
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
That's a great combo.
well, and he became a pharmacist and an attorney by the age of 21. So he grew up working in his uncle's pharmacy, and by the age of 21, he passed the bar in Illinois and became a pharmacist as well.
Just writing scripts from Prohibition.
Right.
Yeah.
Scripts for whiskey.
So he moved down to Cincinnati, and he bought up a lot of distilleries, a lot of pharmacies, and he would, at the time you could get a prescription for whiskey, so he would get medicinal permits, pull whiskey out of the warehouses, and sell it at his pharmacies, totally legal. But then he would also he would rob his own trucks, or he would have his own guys rob his own trucks as they left the distillery, and then he would take that whiskey out to a farm outside Cincinnati they called Death Valley Farm, and bootleggers would come pick that up from all over the country.
Oh, now that's just cool.
And then he would sometimes, I've heard he even claimed some insurance money on the whiskey that was stolen from him, so he was getting paid on it
Oh,
3
wow.
times, and get more permits, pull more whiskey out of the warehouses. So he was a big figure in the 1920s. It was barrels from our distillery that eventually got him sent to prison. But he was also known as a big partier.
Okay.
He actually didn't drink himself, but he would throw these really extravagant parties. And the legend is that he is very likely the inspiration for Jay Gatsby's character.
Okay.
Him and F. Scott Fitzgerald knew each other. And that's why we do like the Gatsby Reserve
Okay.
for our ultra-aged release every year.
Beautiful
that's
bottle.
cool.
Yeah, beautiful bottles, too.
Yeah, this one's a really good looking
That
bottle.
one is really cool.
Yeah, it kind of has that 1920s kind of feel to it with the kind of
It's almost decanter-esque, yeah.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
You did it just for the grip, so you could grip something whenever you're trying to
Oh,
pour
I
it,
like
right?
that.
Yes.
It seems like Remus was a mix between Babe Ruth and Al Capone. I mean, just like all the things that he did, all that.
Yeah.
He seems like he's like in between there somewhere. And Scott gave me a look like, what? Here we go.
Well, it was just an
I
odd.
wasn't sure if you were talking about my looks. I was like, did you look at the picture or something and you thought he looked like the two? I was like trying to figure it out.
No choices. Right, moving on.
So as a question is, have you found, as you've kind of been like, helping with like blending and tasting, is there a sweet spot for the 95.5 as an age range? Because I have no doubt that there is probably some 15 plus year, stock that you guys have for both the bourbon and the rye. Is there kind of like a sweet spot age that you've noticed that, there's like a peak to it? And I'm not put down any of the stuff, any of the juice, but is there something that you really enjoy at that peak level of age?
So I think the rye peaks a little earlier than the bourbon in general.
Okay.
But as you guys know, every batch is different. Every barrel is different. But I would say in general that 7 to 11 is probably where I think most of the barrels will peak for the 95.5. But, there's always exceptions to that rule.
Absolutely.
We actually had a couple years ago, like some of the youngest barrels we put in our single barrel program ever. And this was, it wasn't the 95.5, it was the LESV, the 21% rye. But it was some of the youngest barrels we ever put in our single barrel. They were just 4 years old, and they got picked a lot. At 4 years old, this 21% was really phenomenal. And I was working on a project recently, and I wanted to go back to that batch. And I thought, that they were going to be, it was a batch I was kind of, banking on to be an exceptional batch. And I was really disappointed when I tasted it again. They're like 6, 7 years old now, and they were better at 4. So
Okay.
That kind of stuff happens too. So, but in general, I would say for our rye, the 7 to 11 is probably where I enjoy most of them.
So, hey, we want to be respectful of your time because we're already probably a little longer than probably you anticipated, or you might not even be watching the time. If people want to get in touch with you, is that okay? Is there an email address? Like, how do they get in touch with you if they have questions? Do you want them to send questions through us? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, my email is i.stirsman@mgpi.com. Hopefully hopefully I don't get flooded with emails, but no, I'm pretty good about responding. So yeah, if there's any questions out there about things we do,
Absolutely.
Is there any going to be any plug for the new single barrel program coming up that you want to do?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I kind of explained it. I think, we have some really interesting barrels in this program this year, and so far the response has been really incredible. We're not doing a ton of them, only about 50 barrels total in the program, but we've had, we're going to have to start turning people away here fairly soon.
Oh dear.
We've had really good response for it.
All right, so don't turn me away. I don't know how I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get in there, but don't turn me away.
I'm in. 401k loan.
Yeah,
Worth every penny.
Yeah, we're cash buyers. Cash buyers. We don't even need a liquor store. You got a gift shop. You don't, though. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. If you don't mind, stick around for a couple seconds after I sign us off. But if you want to find Bourbon Barrel Talk, you can find us on Facebook, the Instagram, or the X. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. That way you get our episodes as soon as they drop on Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. Give us a like on your favorite medium, and you can email me any questions that you forgot Ian's email address at bourbonbarreltalk@gmail.com. This is Scott the Brox, Brian, and Ian Stirsman signing off. Peace out.
Shalanja.